It's 5:30. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Start with a roll call. John Parker.
Capstone.
Sarah Thompson.
Mike Baker.
And that is a quorum. Anybody heard from Mark? We'll be fashionably late. And Lonnie is either going to be gone or on Zoom.
Lonnie is
potentially.
up now.
He'll be gone completely.
He's up.
Okay. Sarah, would you like to lead us? Sure.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Okay. Place. Okay. Anyway. Consent agenda. Is not here for the May 10th one, so if we can, if there's anybody that's got,
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Are there copies of items in the consent agenda available? They're in here,
Mhm.
and they were just handed.
And what they were sent out in the email.
They would have to ask Wednesday.
I'm not sure I got the email. I did get the thing in the mail.
Everything that's in the consent agenda.
I'll start that motion.
okay. So is that for just the May 10 one? Because I wasn't there. And
No,
I
the consent
can't.
agenda.
Okay,
You can vote, John. You don't have to be here to not cast a vote.
nobody's, okay, discussion, does anybody have anything to change or update on the minutes for the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Did you vote?
No, how come you can hear that? Aye.
Oh, okay. So unanimous, and we don't have Mark still, okay. Before we move on to number 5, I would like to ask for a motion to rescind our vote for awarding the contract, or demand response, or contracts from our last meeting. After talking with ODOT, our attorney, and a few others, it's not something that we can do. So if somebody would like to make a motion to rescind that, we can, we'll bring it back up under old business, item number 8.
So if you rescind, it has to be your cat or Sarah, but you really don't, it's really considered a null vote under Robert's Rules of Order,
Okay,
because it was an illegal vote.
Okay.
A motion, so you don't actually need to do anything.
okay, well then in that
Because it's
case,
contrary to our policies and the rules.
in that case, it sounds like it's covered, and it was mentioned, so we'll move on. Here comes our attorney.
Yeah.
We have public comment for on agenda items only. If there's anybody from the public who would like to speak to items on the agenda only, now would be your time. Start with anybody online. Hearing none, anybody in the audience? Jennifer, on agenda items?
Under
Thank you.
old business, do you want me to go now?
If it's on the agenda,
On far right's demand response, that's me.
okay.
North Douglas Betterment recognizes that public transportation in rural areas functions not as a luxury, but as a lifeline for low-income families, seniors, veterans, and individuals with disabilities. North Douglas Betterment has provided exceptional service to North Douglas County since 2006. We have never had a civil, or have we ever paid any for 50,000 miles, dedicated over 20,000 hours, started numerous programs, started a senior outreach program, and partnered with national organizations to provide extra support through this service to our community members. Our national sponsors include Pepsi, Nike, Donor View, 360 Good, Red Robin, as well as dozens of other local organizations. To say this is a community passion project doesn't serve it enough justice. There is no one that can serve our area at a lower price point or better than North Douglas Betterment. It is heartbreaking to hear that elected individuals would want to take our service from us, from those who need it the most. I will not stand for bullying of the people I love, and I love every one of our riders and our community members. Our community will not rest, nor will we stop until our voices are heard and our people are served. The people we serve are seniors and people with disabilities. These are the people that fall through the cracks of modern day society. I beg you to think of your loved ones and how you would want them to be treated, because we always go above and beyond what is asked of us every time without exception. Our program is not just a dial-a-ride service. We are a family for people that have no family. We are a listening ear for people that have no one to talk to. We are there when they receive devastating news from their doctors, such as terminal illnesses, and we lift them up and cheer them on. We are their connection to the outside world and the only human interaction most of them have. This is not about me, or it is about them. We pay taxes in North Douglas County, so does Oakland and Sutherland. And basically everyone in the community from Sutherland down will stand behind me on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Matt, on the item?
Also full business. Okay. Can't do it in the same flourish as Jennifer's, but I'll try my best. So understand that the RLS made its determination based on information provided. But UVDN also had conversations regarding, and even in this area as well, regarding the RFP, how it was constructed, and how the contract was constructed. I was directed to complete the application, to stay at the discussion table, despite the fact that I had already noted that the contract was bad and the process was flawed. We both know that the RFP and UVDN receiving funds to operate was then switched in the second RFP to not able to operate, not meeting expectations. In my opinion and UVDN's opinion, to Cheryl's inability to provide a proper RFP. This process only worsened with the second RFP, also directly to Cheryl's inability to provide a proper RFP and contract, which included proper communication with ODOT beforehand. The fact that ODOT, in this case RLS, continues to use the same bad information from a flawed process doesn't make ODOT look good now. I know that you have, on behalf of this towards Jennifer Borman, she's been advocating towards riders and the system. However, there seems to be a unilateral dismantling process of this very system. There's a cost that's going to be applied directly to our ridership. Policy of ride to every 2 weeks actually limits the independence of our consumers, not increase their stress levels. Allowing the ongoing rides to only paratransit, cost of $4 each way, is unethical to us at UVDN as well. Thinking someone who can't afford it may use paratransit for the scheduling aspect alone. Cheryl is now delaying the Q7 reimbursements with last minute changes. The fact that supervisors are refusing to see or refusing to get involved, in this case, makes ODOT complicit to the situation at the cost of the transportation services of Douglas County. The whole RFP process from Douglas County needs to be discarded and an alternative solution that preserves the dial-a-ride system needs to be provided. And the community of service providers left intact. What is being offered below is inappropriate and short-sighted. And these were the options that were indicated to me. So that's all I have.
Thank you. We do have, from the attorney, potential change to the RFP process, unless I misunderstood.
Well, so, and the answer, this is for the general manager's position, but future RFPs could be modeled or based on this, but it's a draft form for the board to review and look at what, at least for instance, in this case, the general manager's position. That's going to go out. This isn't a general one for, say, contacts or, but we can model one after.
So I thought what you and I spoke about was you're going to propose the idea of when there is an issue with whoever in the RFP process, to avoid the blanket statement of I can't communicate with you from somebody,
So
that we can publicize the answer for all to see, and it's not going to be something that can be used as giving somebody an upper hand, unfair advantage.
So in this application, you will see, for instance, there's a statement that says that questions can be submitted to the district about the application process. And then the suggestion is that a frequently asked questions regarding that process is posted on, say, the website. And so it'll just say, you know, under the heading for this, whatever the application is, for the RFP, we received the following question, here's the following answer. And so everyone has a forum to see what, and then questions are anonymous. We don't say, you know, we don't say, John had a question. And we say that we received this question from an applicant here, and then it goes to the board for determination of, or Cheryl or whoever you guys want to answer that question. Then you guys, you know, then you approve the answer and it goes on. Everyone can see it. There's no unfair advantage, and the question gets answered. That's the most open and I think the best practices way to do it. And so all questions though, so the question is, do all questions get answered? Maybe we've already answered this question similarly, you know, already some form of that question. But any question that does get answered should go on the website. And I would say that when questions are asked, that whoever receives it or whoever's in touch with, if it's a committee chair or somebody on the board, the response is just, thank you, we will get an answer to this and it'll be posted on the website. And don't give an oral response, even if it's easy, even if it's simple, so that there's no miscommunication or no misunderstanding that maybe this board member is representing the position of the entire district. You know, so anyway.
Thank you. Okay. So that may be coming. That was number 5, I believe. So number 6, the fiscal budget hearing. Being a hearing, do I have to open the hearing? So we close out or pause our regular meeting and we will open the hearing for our fiscal year 2020 budget hearing.
All right. On May 27th, we held a budget committee meeting and we went over the budget during that meeting, and it was reviewed, discussed, and the consensus was there were no major changes that needed to be made to it, and posted on our website since then and noticed in the paper for public. So we are now at a spot where we could accept public comment and then go from there.
At this time, we'll open the floor up to public comment. Is there anybody online that has comments for our fiscal year 2020 budget hearing? Anybody typing anything? People say they cannot hear people. Is there anybody who's not able to hear me now? By the smiles, I'll assume people can hear me. Anybody that's in the physical audience have anything to say for public comment on our fiscal year 2020 hearing? Hearing none, we will close the hearing and accept a motion to approve and adopt the budget to fiscal year 21, 2020, 21, 22 budget.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mark, seconded by Mike. Any comment from board members?
I have a question.
Sarah?
So on page 2, where it says notice of budget hearing, it says a public meeting of the board of directors will be held on June 22nd. At the top.
That was the date that, we were gonna hold a public hearing and Laura said we had to change it, and apparently I didn't change it.
I would suggest making that change.
Yeah.
And
Which would reflect today's date of June
I would
then
change-
14th. Duly noted. Anybody else? Hearing no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, unanimous, passing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where's my agenda? There it is. Where are we at now? Number 7, new business. 7-1 salary study.
Okay, so in your packet under 7.1, the background is we've been having difficulty filling the upper level management positions. And
I'm
for-
sorry. We closed that one. I'm gonna resume our regular meeting. Go ahead.
All right. So the operations manager, finance manager, those positions have remained unfilled. And the primary comment that I have had from people who have talked about either interviewing or have interviewed is that the wage is too low for them to be able to accept the position. So consequently, we have not been attracting qualified applicants. And in order to actually make an offer that the most recent applicant would accept, the finance manager accepted the position at the same level that I get paid. So that's the challenge with the wage equity. There needs to be a level of adjustment.
And we are looking at a recommendation for, let's do one at a time, the operations manager.
Well, so this comes, what was the source for the salary study?
So there were several salary studies that we looked at. One is the transit survey, 2019 transit talent survey. So the respondents for that are all over the United States, and it was separated by size of the agency. The second one was done by National RTAP, and that one was done by district, or yes, FTA districts. So District 10 is Alaska, Washington, Idaho, Oregon. So they're comparable salaries. And so that one, it was also split between CDL or non-CDL agencies. And then finally,
When you say CDL, it's like agencies that require.
CDL for their vehicles. And then we did get responses from local agencies as well. And those are on the top of the second page. So currently with Basin Transit, People Mover, Sunset Empire, COIC in Bend, and RVTD in Medford, if you throw out my salary and the unknown salaries, the average salary for the general manager position at this time is $107,336. If you throw out the high and low, that average is $99,890. And then the second column is what they had proposed in their budget. So that's the column that those agencies are moving to. So as of July 1, that average salary, throwing out my salary and the unknown, is 111,699. And the average, throwing out the high and the low, is 104,401. And some of those folks had no transit experience as of a year ago when they took their position. Others have had 20 plus years of experience. So there's a huge range of experience in that. I did not make a recommendation for the general manager position, as I just didn't feel like that was appropriate. But the other positions should probably dictate what change might be recommended there. So the operations manager position, we have been advertising that between 55,000 and 70,000. The only
Can you
applicant.
explain what the operations manager does?
Sure. The operations manager, they are responsible for everything under operations. So they're responsible for the transit supervisor, and the operations manager can step into any one of the positions, all the way from supervising. They know how to schedule everyone. They're responsible for the performance reviews and ensuring that we are adhering to everything that has to do with our vehicles, our licenses, and
Do they take care of the maintenance and all that?
Yep. They also are responsible for the inspection of our building and everything along those lines. So the operations manager is the position that I did at UCAN. So basically just responsible for everything that is operations. It's hard to split it out now because I've been doing them both for so long that so they're also responsible for projecting the budget for operations. And so typically my position as operations manager, I projected our budget for UTrans, and I provided that to the chief financial officer. The operations manager here would be responsible for working with operations to project that budget, also with the call center for that budget. And they would also be working with the dial ride providers as well with their contracts and ensuring that contracts were taken care of. So that I don't know if that covers all of it well enough to give you an understanding, or if you have further questions.
No.
I hadn't even thought about that. It's been a while. How do you split that out? So I did go through what the median salary looks like as far as the transit talent and the national RTAP. I did get a few of the operations manager's salaries for our local area as well, but I did not have as many of them. They were not as forthcoming with that information. But based on the interviews I've had and the results of the salaries surveys, I would recommend a range between 68,000 and 100,000 for the operations manager. And the finance manager or controller, some of them it was listed as the financial director. The recommendation there would be between 70,000, 75,000 and 110,000. And that allows us to hire at an appropriate wage. The person that we are bringing on at the end of the week is actually taking a $4,000 a year pay cut in order to move here and take this position.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And as I was writing notes and thinking about this from the past, I did just have a general idea for ranges. And I know today we're looking to get a consensus of sorts for what to make the pay ranges for future applicants. And just what I had written down was very close to what Cheryl had recommended. For chief financial officer, I was looking at 80 to 95. I just was looking at a 15,000 window. The board in the future could come up with some sort of a rubrics to decide, you know, how many points do they match to qualify for this amount of funding in each position. So again, I was gonna make the suggestion for discussion on financial manager of 80 to 95. And I am not hard set on that, and won't fight anybody if they have a different opinion on that. Again, for operations manager, I was pretty close. I did change a number based on Cheryl's reporting just now. I did have 70 to 85, keeping in that 15,000. But looking at everything and having a better understanding of what operations managers do, I was gonna up the top end by 10,000, so it'd be 70 to 95, which I think was about 10,000 less than what you just recommended. For a top, again, working out some sort of a rubrics for qualifications for future employers or members.
So, Cheryl, you're showing different steps.
So what I did just for the purpose of budget projection is at the bottom of the range, I just did a 5% increment for the various different steps. Because typically, if there's a performance review and maybe they receive anywhere between 3 and 5% as an increase. But there's also the possibility of a cost of living increase. This year is a year that we might really look at considering that, simply because the cost of living is increasing quickly. So it's just an overall, 5% is a good number to use to budget. So that's what those steps are. 55,000 or 68,000 for the operations manager, and a 5% step above that would be the 71,400, and so on.
So this has like 7 steps,
Mhm.
and then all positions have 7 steps, or just the senior ones, or?
I just did it for the senior positions, and I just did 7 steps because that seemed to kind of fit where those general ranges were. Not married to that particular range at all. It's just an ease of projection number.
How about the bus drivers?
So the bus drivers, we do a little bit different because there is a wage equity law. The drivers have a CDL. Some of them have had a CDL for a really long time, 30 or 40 years. Some have had a CDL for 2 or 3 years. Some of them have transit driving experience. Some of them don't. Some of them have bus driving experience. Some of them don't. So we have a matrix that we use to place somebody in a position based on the number of years that they've had a CDL. So if they've had a CDL for 10 years, then they get a bump up in their starting pay. If they have had previous transit experience, for the folks that we brought over from UTrans, from UCAN, we gave them a year for year increase from the starting base pay. And then if they have previous transit experience somewhere else, for every 2 years, they get that bump. So if they had, say, 6 years or 7 years, they'd get 3 bumps in that starting pay. And then for school bus driving, that is CDL, it's passengers, but it is very different from transit, simply because instead of minding children, you are accepting fares and providing direction and things of that nature. So there's some crossover, but there's still a lot to learn when somebody comes from from the school bus. So for every 5 years is what they get a bump there.
So
And-
I understand the start, I understand the starting from a pay equity standpoint, but. So now they're here,
They're here. And
and then how did, you know, did it advance up to a top range, a top?
so right now, our range is just set at $17 to $23 an hour. That was just the range. So they start after 90 days. As long as they're performing acceptably, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're showing up on time. They're not getting customer complaints. They're following the rules of the road, all of those kinds of things. They get an evaluation at 90 days and they get a quarter jump. And then again, at 6 months, we evaluate, because a lot of times if you do an evaluation, you give somebody an increase and then they quit doing what they did. They quit stopping at stop signs, things of that nature. So we do that continuous improvement. And so they have the opportunity to get another bump at 6 months. And then it would just be based on their performance every year.
Yeah.
So,
What's the bump at 6 months?
25 cents.
Anybody else have anything for the discussion?
So do we want to take them just one at a time?
Well,
Or how do you?
I was thinking for the operations manager and the finance manager, yes. For the general manager, I would like to see where we're at, but want the new board next month
Do that?
do that. So again, and they're not based off anything other than pulling them out of the thin air reading. But they seem reasonable.
You're pretty close.
So for the finance manager, 85 to 95,000 for a range, again, depending on their qualifications. I don't know if we're taking a vote or just getting a consensus. You want to vote?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Somebody would have to
I think
make a
it's close
motion.
enough to, just make sure that there's that 5% in between.
So if somebody want to make a motion for the chief
5,000.
financial officer, range from 80 to 95,000.
Well, I would move just to accept this one right here from 75 to 100.
This one,
Which is on this one.
oh, on the yellow sheet.
The proposal.
Yeah, because you're within like 5,000. She's right up. She just got hired and she's right up to 70.
Okay. Say the numbers again.
75 to 110.
No, 75. We're talking about finance.
75 to 100.
75 to
So
100.
100. I thought you said 110. Oh. Well, what am I looking at down here then with the
That's
difference? That's the
starting.
5%.
The recommended range for start, 75 to 110. And then the tier would go up as,
And this would take into effect
Oh, I see. Okay.
in July or
July 1.
So how does it fit with 75? If you start at 75, you did a 5%, you don't get to 110. Right, you get to the 100, is that what, if that's what that table represents?
Mhm.
So change it from to 75 to 100. Is that what you're wanting to do?
So I know with the recommendation for 110, so I had built this table out to 25 years in my program.
Mhm.
That's probably,
What that is eventually?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would make a motion for 75 to 100,507.
Mike's made a motion for the
Actually, let's just call it 100,500.
finance manager range would be between 75 to 105,000.
100,500.
Isn't that what I just said?
I just goes in- I
You
think-
said
I think it's
105,000,
105.
it's 100,500.
From 75 to 105,000.
No.
No, gosh dang it.
100,500.
One hundred.
$100,500.
There you go.
My goodness,
I'll second it.
So the house.
right? My, second by Sarah.
estate terms again.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. For the operations manager. Again, I just threw out 70 to 95. But if somebody wants to make a motion for operations managers pay scale, pay range.
So I have a question, on like a org chart visual, is the operations manager over the finance manager, or are they equal?
Equal.
Be the same range then.
I would think so.
Well, just because you're the same range or you're the same level doesn't mean you're the same.
Well, no,
Well,
I'm
no,
just thinking.
Well, within the same range,
Oh, yeah.
not necessarily that each one gets the same
Yeah,
amount,
yeah.
just that the range is the same.
Because I'm also thinking, because our operations manager is also going to be our transportation manager, right?
Yes.
And overseeing all of it.
So would somebody like to make,
Sorry, I'm just speculating. I'll make a motion for the operations manager salary range from 70 to 95,000.
70 to 95?
Second.
70 to 95. Sarah made the motion.
Put $100 thing in there or something.
I'm not confusing him. More than he already is.
Sarah made a motion
Some
for,
agencies that end at odd dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sarah made the motion for operations manager pay scale, pay range to be between 70,000 and 95,000, seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Having no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. And again, we will allow the new board to set the pay scale range for the general manager. Unless anybody wants to,
No, I think that's.
okay. Ethics, that closes out 7.1. 7.2, ethics policy.
So this was in addition to the agenda, based on some of the conversations that I had through the RFP process. What RLS stated was, even though we refer to ethics in multiple different places, we refer to ethics in the bylaws and in the standards of conduct in the handbook, we don't actually have an ethics policy. So based on that, they considered our what we use to deal with ethics weak. And that was where some of the issues for the RFP came in. So the proposed ethics policy, I did run it by Ron Sperry, and he gave his blessing on this version. It does come from special districts, so to government entities and the type of situations that we run into. The one thing that hadn't really sunk in until I started studying this is highlighted in yellow on the front page there. And it's that one statement that says that upon employment with our organization, you became a public official. And so we had looked at it as the board is public officials. You guys are elected officials. But we had not been looking at the fact that we as employees were also considered public officials because we work for the district. So that kind of, it sets a different light on things and really makes you look at what you're doing a little bit different. The other piece that we were missing was the very last line on the last page, which is failure to meet these standards will result in investigation and, depending on the outcome, result in discipline up to and including separation or termination. That was also something that we were lacking and in the ethics piece of our RFP process.
Harvey, we have a question about whether employees are public officials. They are.
Yeah,
Every one of us that are that is a public official also.
your state employee, or in this case, you'd be a district employee, just like every county employee. With
So you
the,
see the thing, for example, on the $50 from a single source. So sometimes you get consultants, this one's more typical, where they want to take you out to lunch or they want to do this and that. You can go out to lunch with them, but you got to pay for you pay for yourself. Just to avoid that conflict, but that comes up periodically.
Yes, I mean, it's defined under statute. It's any person serving in the state of Oregon or any of its political subdivisions or any other public body is defined as an elected official, appointed official, employee, or agent, irrespective of whether the person is compensated. So it's in the same capacity as a police officer, a volunteer working for the county. And it doesn't mean that you have some kind of ministerial function that you can boss a member of the public around or do something, but you're
Responsible.
It's for the purpose of, somebody on the inside of the organization is getting bought off or bribed or has a special relationship with somebody, and then there's hookups, like.
It's not rules to follow.
Yeah.
so this is an important thing for us to go over, but with it being a month away from the next board coming in, I think it'd be a good thing for the new board to have fresh in their incoming meetings to go over ethics policies. We've already got, this is all public, right, Ron? And it's the ethics violation.
It's not yet.
I wouldn't,
It's closed
I
for
wouldn't
30
discuss,
days.
I wouldn't discuss it.
Okay. I think this 7.2, unless anybody disagrees, would be a great thing for us to continue into the next meeting so that the new coming board is fully vested and fully involved in the discussion.
I would just ask staff, is there any issue if this is delayed till next month?
No, the next RFP that I'm working on, it won't be complete by then, so.
So we'll move that on to the next meeting. On to old business, number 8, on-call rides demand response. So for our attorney's benefit, before you got here, I asked about us rescinding our vote from last meeting for awarding. You listening? Okay. And Mike suggested that it was an illegal vote anyways, and we don't need to do the rescission of the vote to award.
I think my advice would be to recognize that, so the process that you guys, that I instituted basically in March was not, well, probably should be called. I thought it was okay after the fact that it was put on the record in a public meeting, but after reviewing the statute, what needs to happen is votes can be taken, straw polls can be taken.
Oh,
even
this
if
is-
consensus.
No, this
Not
is-
for that, this was for
Robert.
us awarding.
The RFP.
Well, but you guys still
Since it
voted
didn't-
in a executive session, right?
No, that was an
Oh, it was
emergency
after.
session.
Yeah, that was
It
regular.
it was in regular, it was in a regular meeting.
Okay,
Part of the meeting.
I thought it was part of the
No.
executive, okay.
No, but I said it was under Robert's Rules of Order, since it was contrary to our own procurement policies and state and federal rules. That basically it becomes an illegal
It's-
motion,
it's
it's basically
void.
null and void, and you don't have to rescind because it's a void motion.
Right, and so, but recognizing, I mean, you just recognize it on the record as well.
Yeah.
And so it probably needs to be recognized and discussed, and then the solution, whatever the board's gonna do about it, needs to be discussed.
Right.
Which is what we're doing right now, right?
Yep,
I believe so.
so I think that's fine.
On-call rides demand response.
Okay, so as you know, we we conducted an RFP. There were 4 proposers that submitted responses. 2 of those responses were deemed responsive, 2 were deemed non-responsive. There was a special board meeting that was held on 6/1/2021. Discussion was raised regarding possible conflict of interest with Hypertransport. Board passed the motion we were just discussing to award all proposers who had submitted a response. So that would, if we continued along those lines, that would effectively prevent us from having access to about $850,000 worth of federal 5310 funding that we use to fund demand response service and also the call center. So the end result, RLS and Associates, they're the ones that did our site review. They reviewed the information. I gave them access to be able to go through the portal and see the documents that were submitted and the Q&A process that we went through, the questions that were posted and the answers that were posted with those. They went through the process and considered it a good process. So ODOT also went through that portal as well. So the recommendation is to award Mercy, who was the only agent that provided all the necessary documents without a perceived conflict of interest. They did indicate that Mercy could subcontract with Hypertransport since they would not have a direct relationship. But that's not our business to discuss.
They could subcontract with
Any
anybody.
provider, correct?
They could, yes. So UPTD could also use a bid process for some of the STF funding because there is some STF funding that had originally been awarded to Umpqua Homes that needed to be reallocated. And so there's some funding there that we can go through, request for quotes for the specific areas that we feel we need to cover. So for instance, City of Reedsport, we could request 3 quotes from possible transportation providers in City of Reedsport, including City of Reedsport. And then based on those quotes, we could make an award to cover that area.
What if you don't get 3?
So I would have to go and read through the requirements again, but it's pretty much like when we went out for the bid for the paving. We requested 3 bids, only 2 people responded. So you have to document that the third one did not respond. And we also have to put it on Orphan so that it is available for anyone. I believe
Which
it's
is changing tomorrow to Buy America.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
Orphan goes away.
Wow,
Oh, okay. Does
good
that
to know.
change our access? I'll have to,
I don't know.
I'll research that tomorrow. Okay. So that's an option that we have available. And I have opened a conversation with City of Reedsport to see if they would be interested in continuing to provide service. And then
And that would be as under this option as
State
a
funding.
state funding. Okay.
yeah, the STF
But not the
funding.
853,000 under the STF and maybe STIF.
They would not be able to have access to the 5310 or which is the 850,000
Right.
or the STIF. They would only have access to STF, Special Transportation Fund, which is specific to seniors and people with disabilities. STF and STIF are in the process of combining. So the STF portion will eventually be part of the STIF. But that's not for another 2 years when that happens, and we'll have different rules associated with the funding once that happens. So ODOT does recommend that even if we get those things in place, that we go out for the RFP process again in a year and a half. And that the year and a half instead of 2 years, because we want it done before we have to go out to look for the award of the funding. We want to know who the providers are. I thought that we could do it in conjunction, together, and it just didn't work out well that way. So we want to go out for the RFP process again in a year and a half, decide who the providers are going to be, and then do the funding piece of it. And then finally, the final option would be that we could cancel the RFP and start again, have the state and RLS review the process. What that would mean is that we would go without dial-a-ride service for probably a minimum of 3 months, which is potentially harmful for, well, not potentially, it is absolutely harmful for the people that we serve. So,
So can I ask about a modified option 1 and maybe adding another option in here and just see if.
you could ask.
So the 853,000, how do you use it? So can we go client services, which I think are eligible under 5th, or they just SDF?
SDF, yeah. So the way that this could work is, so I talked with Mercy. They are more than willing to expand. Of course, they've been planning to expand. We've just been, kind of putting things off, waiting for the more vehicles to be available, various different things. So they're willing to expand. They were absolutely not expecting to be the only provider. So when we're looking at expanding for Mercy for this next year, we're looking at they're going to add another 40 hours worth of service. So they'd be providing 80 hours, which is comparable to what our 2 paratransit vans do.
Okay, so here's my modified one. Can they, instead of them subbing with Viper Transport, can they sub with UBDN and North Douglas Betterment?
They can do.
Are they willing to? I don't know if they're willing.
So what Mercy had indicated was that not that they would be unwilling, but that it is such a legal process for them to do something like that, that it was probably biting off more than they could chew. They said it could take at least a year for legal to get back to them with how they could do that. They're not really set up to do that.
Is that with anybody or specific to certain entities? So
Yeah.
it'd be the same year-long process for Hyper.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more option.
Hold on.
Can we, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can we do client services? So we're doing a contract, right? So can we do client services for a short period to basically kind of, because it basically keeps it rolling, isn't it? Under that, isn't it kind of like, or even if we did the bid,
So
maybe the bid is the better way to go.
Right,
call
the
it
bid is
that,
what
right?
we would have to do at this point. But the other option is, so a portion of that 5310 funding was allocated to help run the call center.
Mhm.
And a portion, well, the rest of it was allocated to the providers. So with the change, then we would, we're going through with Mercy to determine what their actual costs would be, make sure that we put enough in the contract to be able to cover that. And then the district has the ability to hire drivers and provide the service until, and if we could do that for a year and a half until we do the RFP process again. What that does is it gives us the ability to establish the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. service that we want, that we have been discussing, that we put into the RFP. And then it also gives us the ability to establish the Monday through Saturday. And, we we could have 4 more drivers on board. We would have to pay a higher match rate for the 5310 funding if the district is using it for operations. But then we have a pot of funding that is stiff funding that was specific to filling the gaps that might be left. We, of course, did not anticipate it looking like it does, but we do have a plan in place. We have interviews scheduled with a couple of people this next week. And we have the potential of having 4 more drivers on board before July 1 to take over for, so that we don't have empty vehicles.
So could we do a short-term bid award? Like, but could we award something that's on a temporary basis, for example, through December, and yet go out to, and then re-go out to RFP for? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out a way that we could do a short term and then gives, which allows things to continue to operate while we maybe go out to RFP. I'm just concerned that if we did that, do we lose our pot of money?
So our short term could be, we award to Mercy and we fill the gaps the way that we can.
Mhm.
So I did email both NDB and UPTD and suggest to them the client only option, which is the STF funding. It is a much simpler funding source. It is specific to people that are elderly or have disabilities, which is their clientele. They would qualify for client only services. I wouldn't have to go out for an RFQ. It would be a matter of, for those two, of reconvening the stack and having that funding approved for them. So there would be no gap. They would still, because ODOT falls under the same requirements for the contracts that FTA laid out for us this last with the RFP and with the site review. They would still fall under those same guidelines. They'd have to have the drug and alcohol policy, and they'd have to have the random testing in place. You know, everything that we've been talking about, they would still have to do that.
Nothing changes though, and nothing changes. I think the only change is that I understand from that would be, they would have to dispatch themselves.
They would self-dispatch.
And they
because
get a
it would be
shorter,
the-
and they have a shorter quoted report to fill out.
Yes, they would have,
Otherwise, it's pretty much the same.
yeah, less vehicles.
Same, what do you mean less vehicles?
Well, like UBDN has 3 vehicles because they're providing dial ride service. And so they would more than likely just need the 1 vehicle for the client only service. But that's a conversation that they have not responded back to me yet.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt here. I never received an email from Cheryl regarding this topic, so I'm not sure what she's talking about. If you could pull it up, that would be really helpful.
So I did want to ask, at the beginning, we had public comments on agenda items only. Both speakers were speaking to 8.1. And I wanted to make sure that their statements or questions do get answered during this time.
Actually,
Did you have a, with your
She's looking
statement,
something up on the
did you have a specific question?
Already have my own internal answer on that, but since you're asking, the funding would be split roughly $150,000 over a biennium between 4 agencies, which would break it out to about $1,500 a month. So just with the overhead alone, with random UAs and background checks and things like that, it's a non-functional system.
so our background
not
checks are about
functional
$50 a piece. So that's really a very, is it 50 or 35? So no more than 50.
And Mercy's able to tap into the 5310.
Would the district be doing the testing for the providers?
That's also an option that they could be sent under the district authority, but then the response would come back to us. And then we would notify the provider. It's the way that we did things when we were providing service for TransLink. So on Friday, I asked if she had time to schedule a short call, and I also left a voicemail. So I believe everything else on there.
Yeah, there's no
is-
email. So my daughter graduated from high school on Friday. I didn't work Friday. So,
Okay, so this is an email to
yeah, you
Jennifer.
said that you
Mhm.
sent me an email that
I
described the
don't want
option you
this
just
meeting to
stated.
devolve into an argument. I do
Sure, okay, so going
apologize.
back, there was no email, and here's the thing. I said from the beginning that Cheryl's plan was to get everything in-house. Tonight, it has come full circle for us, hasn't it? There's been 2 RFP
Jennifer,
processes
I'm
at this
really
point.
very sorry. I can't allow it because it's,
Of course.
go-
Well, we're gonna be
I-
on to our 3rd RFP, but I just have to say, the only people that suffer here are riders that we've been transporting since 2006. We've done it for no pay. These people need help. These people have no one else to speak for them. This is absolutely so sad. And then you guys are gonna do a 3rd RFP, which I hope you do, so that we can still help our community. If you think that it's not gonna be a big difference running something from Roseburg into these small communities versus people that are already at the heart and soul of their community providing this service, there's a huge difference. Like I said, we go above and beyond every time without exception, period.
I do appreciate your input, and you know I appreciate your input, but I do have to keep the meeting moving and some decorum about it, so.
Yeah, there
I
are the
do
options.
apologize, but thank you for your input at this time. We do have a section for public comment, and I do invite you to stay.
Will it do any good?
It depends on what you have to say. I
Just
don't,
fighting for the community.
I understand and I respect that. So where are we at on this?
So I just want to make sure I understand. So we have Mercy as the only responsive bidder. And they're going to try and increase their service by 4 drivers or 4 vehicles or something, or
One.
1 vehicle. Okay.
One, that's why I'm saying that the resolution needs to be, the district needs to step up and fill that gap. It's not the optimal resolution. And there is client-only service that is available for both UPTD and for NDB. And that, of course, is their choice.
So can we, so my question was, can we do client only for a short period of time and go out to RFP? So that, so under the short period of time, we're using the state funding. And then go out to, and then kind of re-RFP it a little bit so that maybe they can come in starting in January. So, you know, a year and a half contract, but at that point, then we're tapping into, being able to tap into the $5310.
So can we kick this around a little bit later and make a motion for accepting
Discussion.
Mercy?
Is Jennifer, oh, okay. Jennifer Boardman would be a good,
I'd like to make a motion to award to Mercy Express.
Second.
Motion by Kat to award the, excuse me, to award Mercy Express,
Deja vu.
seconded by Sarah. Where are we at here? Shoot. Yeah. Second by Sarah. Any discussion? I do have some discussion. I would like to make sure that before this second round of RFP goes out,
Sure.
before the next round of RFP goes out, the 3rd, that Mr. Sperry does help out with the language or the policies surrounding RFPs. So that way, when any agency out there has an issue, be it ones that we just experienced on this last one or anything new that comes up in the future, that the answer never becomes, we're in a process, we can't speak to you. there needs to be something out there, like Mr. Sperry mentioned, where we have on our own website, commonly asked questions for RFPs.
I think you might have missed that meeting, John, when we talked about that, but I think there was some
Was that the
type
main?
of there was a portal.
There was a
There
portal.
was some software they did where everybody was able to ask the questions and get a response so that
Some
everybody got it.
people, some people,
Okay,
it
that
didn't
must have
really
been the
work.
May
Every one of them
10th
was answered.
one. Okay, yeah, I was.
Yeah,
out
so
of
there's
country
some
for that
software
one.
that was invested in to handle that.
Okay, so, and if it, I mean, it sounds like that still didn't work. So if maybe it can just be molded to a more user-friendly thing. I know that people on the district side might say, hey, this is perfect, you guys need to figure it out. But maybe being open to taking suggestions from the applicants to make it move more smoothly as we go in an evolutionary way, that would be a good thing. That was all my comment for it. Anybody else have comments?
I might suggest, so like when we're going through grant applications at work, they do webinars ahead of time that show you how to navigate through it, especially with it being a new software. That might be something that would be beneficial to set up. Or did you? Okay.
We've done that, yeah.
But I meant for the people that are gonna be using it.
It's
So
all
all the
available.
We
providers.
went through all of the instructions line by line. This is what the expectation is.
So there was an issue on this one, and if Jennifer doesn't mind me using it for an example,
Sure.
your loss of information. Was it
was-
QuickBooks or something?
Yeah, so our QuickBooks, so the reason we were deemed inept is because our QuickBooks program basically burst into flames. And we have not taken this lightly. We're in the middle of a multi-million-dollar mitigation deal. So we have been on it. And I submitted that into the portal stating, I cannot give you the information you seek because of this. I did all of the other work, however, everything. And what they needed from me, the district already has that information.
So there are sometimes extenuating circumstances, is that the right word?
Mhm.
That can come up, and I think that we should always, the district and any government body out there, anybody who's gonna have money to give and people filling out applications, should be a process for navigating those type of situations. So I just wanna suggest that we do look at that in the future. There's a motion, there was a second.
John, and so I was raising my hand because where you went was correct. The issue with that is that you cannot be arbitrary. And so if there is going to be a process, it has to actually be in the notice, it has to be in the RFP. It has to say, this is what we're gonna do if you meet, because usually what you want is, like what's in here is we're taking applications. This must be in the application or else. And that way, that helps management sift through, hacks or rookies who are, not ready to provide a service and because they're not providing information. But if the board wants to have a process for allowing extenuating circumstances such as a massive data loss, like what was being described or something like that, then it needs to be carefully crafted so it doesn't look arbitrary.
Right, and I'm not suggesting at all that we try to hash that out today.
Right. So ad hoc
The
is-
problem
I would
is I
suggest
couldn't
starting in
ask
July
questions
1st.
anymore, cause she turned off the questions part, so there was no way I could communicate what was going on.
Okay, and I hope that the future board, I won't be there for it, but I hope the future board can help address those types of
Well, I don't think that
situations.
we're gonna be here in the future.
I just
Is it-
feel like, we thought that we
We're
had
right where we wanna be,
autonomy
have it all
of our
in-house.
community. And instead, we had some kind of federal oversight that turned into something that was guidelines and suddenly became the law.
So with federal monies, they don't just give it out freely. You have to jump through hoops and qualify for it. And we don't actually always qualify for that federal money. Sometimes it's funneled through the state of Oregon, who then also has requirements for us to jump through. So we have to meet the federal requirements that they had to meet, and then we have to meet theirs, just like we're gonna make other people meet our requirements on top of the federal and the
I'm
state.
just not always sure we're interpreting this stuff right.
So I think we're getting off discussion. We have a
Sorry.
motion on the board and a second. We're still in discussion on that for awarding Mercy. Where did
Yes.
it go? I lost it.
I didn't.
Can you read back the motion for us, Christine?
It was Pat moved to award Mercy Express and Sarah seconded.
And we're on discussion. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Let's call for the vote. All in favor of awarding contract to Mercy, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Did you vote? You're staying?
J-A.
Huh?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Moving on to where are we at?
So before we move on.
Yes,
now that
sir.
We've taken that vote, so I'm still interested in finding a way, you're gonna ask Jennifer Boardman.
Oh.
Question.
Jennifer, are you on?
Am.
All right. Would you like to chime in on this?
What is the specific question that I'm answering?
Jennifer, this is Mike. So I was just asking, can we do like a temporary or a short term, I guess would be more accurate, client only service with, for example, UVDN and I just want to tell you that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Or done this better. And then while we're in that contract, that 6-month contract, go out and do an RFP, another RFP for, the remainder of the biennium.
You can do it with 50 with
Yes.
money or STIF, but you can't do it with 5310 because it has to be done through the federal process, which the district has been out of compliance with since they were part of the county. The state allowed the district, because you were in the process of forming, the latitude of not having an RFP during the last biennium, because it was supposed to be, you guys were supposed to be getting your stuff together and having it in place for the new biennium. So no, 5310 cannot be client only for.
No, that's not the question. So the question would be, can we use STF to do client only for the next 6 months? But during that next 6 months, re-RFP using the federal process for use of federal funds starting January 1st.
You can, and it wouldn't have to be client only. You could do, as long as you stay under the Oregon thresholds, which is $150,000 for the length of the contract. You're allowed to do, you have latitude with the STF because it's state funding, but you have to follow the procurement requirements that Oregon puts in place. So an intermediate procurement is $10,000 to $149,999. So you have to just get bids for that. But you would still have to do that for anything that you spend up to $149,999.
Correct. So we would go out and get, so I want to make sure I understand the process. So we could go out and get a few bids or whatever and perhaps recontract with like UVDN and
NDB.
thank you. NDB and while we're in that process, kind of re-go out with the federal procurement. I don't know if we can keep Mercy, hopefully we can keep Mercy going, but perhaps allow additional providers to propose on a new RFP, which then allows us starting January 1st of, I'm just throwing arbitrary date out, but of 2022 to start using 5310 funds for those additional providers.
No, because we would have to do an RFP for all the providers at that point, right?
Right.
Well,
We
we have
can't
to,
just have one in place and then do another RFP for additional, can we?
What the state recommended was that you have to make a determination on how you're going to move forward for this period. And regardless, because you had talked about doing like a 5-year procurement for this at the next biennium, which we're going to start that process in 2022, I believe that November of 2022. You will have to go out for an RFP for the next biennium. The only problem that you run into is that the way that the procurement law states is that you can't go over $150,000, $149,999. You can't go over that number for the length of the contract. So I will have to do some research to find out if they mean the contract that you go into with a provider, or whether it's considered you are going into a contract with the state for the biennium for all of your agreements. So if we're considering that the contract, or whether you're considering the threshold as the contract you're making with those providers. So that would be a question that I need to get confirmation on from our financial folks.
What about the third RFP due in like a week?
I don't know that we can do that. I think it requires at least 3. And then you have to put it together.
And 2
Can't we just
weeks
do a hybrid
public
of the
notice.
two? Add the pieces that were missing from the first one, or add pieces from the first one that didn't complete the second one?
So at this point, the choice becomes, do we get the reporting done that is now very, very, very far behind? Or do we go through this process again? You know, we're at that point where we're making choices. I cannot spend 50+ hours, which I've done more than 50 hours on each one of these RFPs, getting them prepared just to put them out. There has to be that the period, the issues that we ran into this time were because the period of time was too short. There should have been a longer period of time for them to be able to review the documents before we had the pre-bid meeting. And then there should have been a longer period of time for the Q&A after the pre-bid meeting. That would have resolved a lot of issues right there, but we were on a time crunch. To do it on another time crunch it's ineffective at best. And I won't be available. You know, I have to get this reporting done, whether you guys choose to retain me as a general manager or you choose to let me go. I have to get this reporting done.
As a citizen, can I just say something? Because I'm not on the board yet.
What's it have to pertain to?
I'm sorry.
What's it have to pertain to?
I just wanted to say something. This is going on here between me, this lady here. I'm not sure what's going.
Can we hold that until public comment, please?
Yes,
Thanks.
I just feel it has something that I could say that would help.
Okay, public comment is just a few moments away.
All right.
Did you get your answers from Jennifer Boardman?
So, yeah, I'm not sure, because I guess I'm trying to figure out a way that we could do some type of a short-term contracts, and I understand we've only got so much time to do stuff, and this one we have to get done on time. The other ones we needed to, but we didn't need to. You know, but sometimes after that, could we put one together? Again, that you know, could start in January instead of that. And even, I kind of wondered in procurement, could you even say, you know, if you're a responsible bidder, if you were deemed a responsive bidder under a previous thing, you're automatically considered a responsive bidder for this one as a criteria, so that Mercy, I don't know, that's getting kind of iffy on things, but.
And maybe Jennifer.
Combined procurements.
Jennifer Board, but I think what she's saying, and what I think the law is that you determine what you need in the short term. And then you determine how much that contract's going to cost. And if that contract costs, so if you need somebody for 3 months to provide a service, then if that contract will exceed $150,000, then you cannot use, what Jennifer's saying is you can't use the intermediate procurement process for whatever type of, for the funds that they're permitted. If you could figure out a way to get that service procured for $150,000 or what, you know, $149,999 for 6 months, like you're proposed, like it sounds like what you're saying, then you could. And so I think that's the answer to your question, is that the procurement process provides a way to have a short-term contract with a provider as long as that's under 150,000. I was just looking up something here and it says that the state attorney general can authorize in special circumstances contracts that exceed that. But they have guidelines for that and you would have to get it from the state attorney general. So the answer is, I think Jennifer might say for specific, these STF funds, or the answer is yes, you might be able to do that. Because then you would have the process for the RFPs go out to exceed that 150,000, to have it just basically enter into a 1-year contract for remainder of the biennium, right?
So for the
Is that what you're
STF,
asking?
for the STF funding, we can do that.
That's what we're
Yeah,
talking
but
about.
I'm asking to do a state solicitation and for a short term. And a new federal solicitation for a longer term, which then allows us to tap into the
Oh,
So
$53.
when ODOT sends me the grant for execution, it lists on it every single provider and how much money we have allocated through our STIF committee or our STAT committee. And so all of those, the amount that we allocated to the call center, to each one of the providers, those are all listed in the grant, right? And then when the reimbursements are requested, we submit that reimbursement for, say, City of Sutherland was always the top one on the list last time. So City of Sutherland, say a reimbursement request for $5,000. And then you go on to the next one, NDV. And then the next one, Mercy Express, and you'd go through and you do the allocation from the grant by each project. And so when the grant comes to me to sign after, when it's been executed, then it already has all of the projects in it. So if we don't have the grant allocated, if they don't execute the grant, if we hold on for the RFP, we have to wait for the grant to be executed. We can't access any of it.
I guess I was trying to do all of that within the time frame of, say, mid-August to the end of December.
Right, but we have the call center is in that as well. And we just passed a budget that doesn't allocate additional funds from somewhere else to cover that. So.
Carol? Can I,
Yes.
so I talked to Andrew, who was our finance guy, and the way that they've always had done it that way for the 5310 in the past, that they put in each one of the projects, because I think it was some kind of an issue with the county and the providers or something like that. So what I was told on Friday from Andrew is that we can go in and just do it as purchase service and call center. So we just have 2 projects, and then you're able you have to document the public input that where your STAT committee wants you to reallocate the funds, but you're actually only going to have 2 projects in the coming year. So we would be able to allocate those funds. And that's something that I just learned from Andrew on Friday afternoon. So I'm sorry I did not get you that information yet. But which is much more flexible. In the past, it's been so constrained because of those projects. And I asked if we couldn't just have it more generic so that you have just, because they're all purchase service. Every single one of those are purchase service. So why have 17 different projects in one grant? Why not pop them into just one? So from what I understand, and I rewrote the statement of work last Friday, that there's going to be a project for purchase service and there's going to be a project for the call center. So you'll have 2 projects on your 5310, which gives you more flexibility. But you have to make sure that you go back to that STIF STAT committee and document whoever is going to receive those funds. And I do like Mike's idea of, I think it would work as long as, because that would be a short-term contract until you got to the RFP. If you did a good RFP process in, let's say, 3 months, you could make that for a longer period. You could make it a 5-year RFP and have those agencies going forward for longer periods, but you have to have that good process. The one that's complete and make sure that, you know, there's no question about it. Yeah, those are my inputs.
I'm just trying to think outside the box in a way that we can all continue to operate. But I don't know that we can continue to operate that way under just state funds for a biennium. So it's, I'm thinking, we need to tap back into that 5310, those federal monies, so that we're only paying 10% instead of 100%.
Yeah, Jennifer, is it possible to do 3 projects to cover where we're gonna be filling the gaps in the interim? To do the call center?
If we did it, which we would have to anyway, yeah, so we would have to do it as 3 different projects because there would be 3 different ALIs, which are the federal codes. So you would have one for you providing the service. So it would be direct operations, one for purchase service, and one for the call center.
Okay. And so we need to take that back to the stat committee and then have the stat committee make the recommendation to the board.
Well, I guess what you would need to do would be to figure out exactly how much funding you're talking about for each one. And if you're going to continue funding like the North Douglas Betterment, the UVDNs, UHI took themselves off the table, but those other agencies, you still have to figure out how much you want to award those agencies.
And I think part of that would have to be, assuming you went out an RFP, I believe we also use STF for matching the federal funds.
Right.
So assuming then that they were eligible at that point, and we were then moving forward, how much would you have to allocate toward that piece as well? So kind of projecting ahead. Different, awkward.
Yeah. More work,
More
but
work.
We need to do what's going to be best for the people that use the service.
Yeah, it keeps it running and it keeps us necessarily without having, for us to have to pay a higher percentage, that's just not worth it. That would actually have providers do that.
We're good?
Okay.
So I think the direction is to see if we can move forward with bid or client or whatever you call it, some type of temporary contracts to bid award or whatever to do some services for, I would say 6 months. And then somewhere, I know you're gonna be busy, you have to have those turned in by August, sometime mid-August, let's just say. But sometime between there and December, we have an RFP process that we go through and before that, probably before December, maybe even in November a little bit, because you got holidays and things in there. Try to get all of that done as quickly as possible toward the end of summer, so that we've got time to put together contracts, and then we can access the federal funding starting in January and go back to normal. Yeah. Closer to normal.
We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
8.2, update site review report findings.
All right, so there were 7 of the site review findings that had a 60-day compliance timeline. And they are all in one form or another still in process. So number 7 was we need to solicit a new round of competitive quotes for the bus shelter cleaning services. And we do have somebody that is working on finding places that could pressure shelters, and so we're getting ready to do that process. The lease agreements for the vehicles. We have a lease agreement that is acceptable that will be included with the new contract. So that will go into effect when we have the new contracts go into effect. The vehicle maintenance program, I was about ready to turn that in when I realized that the demand response vehicles for Dial-A-Ride were not in our preventive maintenance plan. So our preventive maintenance plan now needs to include all of the Dial-A-Ride vehicles as well. And I did not have that complete, so that's still in process. The facilities maintenance plan, we had put one together, but it lacked a timeline for when we were going to do inspections of the facility and of the shelter. So that's something that our operations manager was working on. And so I'm refamiliarizing myself with the project. I had started it, passed it off. He's no longer here. So taking it back over and making the required changes to that.
Are we looking at, or maybe not are, but will we look at additional shelters?
Mhm.
Yes. I know when we put the shelters in years ago, you know, there are some places that are conspicuous, the mall, McDonald's, things like that, that wouldn't allow an easement to have that happen, but they've all changed owners since then.
Yeah. So yes, that's something that we're looking at doing when the 5339 grant comes available at the beginning of the year for the bus and bus facilities. Shelters are considered a facility. Yes. So let's see, what else? The Title VI plan, still working on that. A lot of things just kind of went on hold for the RFP process. So we just don't have enough manpower until we have an operations manager on board. And I'm starting to feel it. So trip denials, we have done training with the dispatchers. The newer dispatchers were not understanding that a trip denial is really it is for paratransit, and it is if we deny a trip that is requested 24 hours in advance. So they were logging all of the trip denials, even if they were same day or if they were Dial-A-Ride. And so that was not what the requirement was. So we've done some training on that. So number 16, UPTD must begin utilizing its routing and scheduling software or other means to accurately monitor the percentage of service provided as subscription trips. So one of the findings that we had in the site review is that we cannot at any time have more than 50% of our capacity for the Dial-A-Ride service booked. So
At any time?
anytime, we have to have 50% of our capacity available for same day trips. And right now, we do not have same day trips. We have not had same day trips available in a really long time. And a lot of the
That just seems like a lot of capacity to hold back.
well, right, it does. But at the same time, we have people calling every single day wanting a ride that we can't provide for them because we don't have any same day rides available. So part of what we're doing in order to combat that is we have to look at the difference between the FTA regulations regulate the paratransit service. Paratransit service has to be available as a guaranteed ride for anybody that is not able to use the regular transit system and they live within the boundaries. Their trip takes place within those paratransit boundaries. So we cannot deny a ride for paratransit. Conversely, dial-a-ride is on a space available basis. So if we limit, as suggested, the ride reservations for the dial-a-ride demand response service to the 2 weeks prior, instead of being able to schedule some of the trips that are in our system, and we're still running across them on a daily basis, we're scheduled with a no end date. So the people have had their same trip scheduled, like to go to the grocery store every single Monday at 9 a.m. And it's been scheduled for years. And
So we definitely want to communicate that to people that are riding.
yes, and they're communicating that as they're scheduling rides, and that's what's creating some of an uproar. So some people understand it, some people not so much. But we're also looking for ways to provide service to people that are falling through the gaps. So, and that we'll get to that a little bit further when we're looking at the medical transportation stuff. So we have these findings that I'm working on. I should have had them done by this meeting, and so this is another thing that I am behind on, primarily because of the RFP process. And that's that.
Okay, do we have any questions for the site review findings? And then let's move on to 8.3, update master plan.
So the transit master plan, that is a project, of course, that is ongoing, probably the next 8 months to a year. We have had our third our project management team meeting, and we're in the process. Well, I've got a timeline here for you on your page. So right now we're in the very beginning phase, the summer 2021. We, during our meeting this next week, will be reviewing a driver survey that'll be passed out to all of the drivers, both dial-a-ride and transit. And then we'll also be reviewing the proposed rider survey, and that also would be provided for the dial-a-ride and transit riders. We're going to have a technical advisory committee meeting that is on site with the consultant, and we will then take them on a bus on a tour of the area to show them the busiest stops, the stops that need improvement, the potential new route that we have planned that will go through the YMCA and up to the Social Security office, the most widely requested stops. It'll also go up to UCC, as that's one of our transfer points, and it's also one of our highest used stops. We're going to go down the I-5 corridor because there is currently the I-5 corridor, the congestion study that's been done, they call it the bottleneck. And so they want to see the area that might at some point be proposed for a bus rapid transit lane, because that would be in the 20-year plan somewhere along the way. If it's in there, then we can look at it. Other entities can look at it and possibly implement it. Apparently there are areas where they can set up during certain times of day a bus rapid transit lane that is basically the shoulder of the freeway. And so you would get to go by all of the traffic if you were in the bus. And that is looking at mitigating congestion between Winston and Roseburg. That the morning commute traffic between Winston and Roseburg is getting worse and worse. And, there are really two ways to get here. Well, there's three if you go Looking Glass, but there's I-5 and there's 99. And, if there's anything that happens on one, the other one is completely backed up. So that's just something that is in our plan, if it fits in with other plans that could come to pass in the future. That's what we're looking at. So then we would go all the way to Winston and come back on 99. So they would get to see both stretches. And then if time permitting, we would continue on out to the new construction by Sunshine Park, where they're putting in, if I'm not mistaken, it was 180 apartments.
So
I think that's it, yeah. So when that project is complete, we'll have the bus service going out there to Sunshine Park as well. So that gives them the opportunity to see, we'd take them by Deer Creek, which is where we're gonna have a new stop, and the Pomona Street apartments as well. So there's also going to be content for the website. I didn't get a clear picture whether this is content that goes on our website or if it's a website that is specific to the project, but I'll find that out and let you know. And the other thing is, because Lonnie is representing Myrtle Creek, we need to get a volunteer from the board to represent the board on our technical advisory committee. So I don't know if you want to do that now or if you want to wait until the next meeting in July when we have 2 new people that might want to volunteer, but that's up to you. You
I
guys.
vote we wait till next time.
Me
Yeah,
too.
I can't do it, I'm funding it.
Yes, all right, that's that.
Oh, Jeff. My mouth ain't working. General manager's report, number 9.
All right, so you'll see that we have some pretty graphs. We have Crystal to thank for that. She has put the ridership month over month for us to be able to take a look at. This first page is the fixed route ridership. And you can see that total ridership has actually fluctuated only about 1,000 really. It's gone down as low as 3,300 and up as high as 4,900. But it's kind of running really pretty steady as far as the ups and downs in ridership go. And it separates that out by the red is the Roseburg route and the blue is the Winston-Sutherland commuter route and the purple is the South County route. On the next page, we have the dial-a-ride providers. And that also shows their month over month through from July of 2020 through May of 21. And it also gives a different color for each one of the providers as well. So the bottom, is it the bottom one or? So some of these blues are honestly, I did not realize it, but some of these blues are too close together for me to be able to determine which one is which. Son of a gun. Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then we have UVDN at the bottom and then Reedsport, Winston, oh yes, Mercy, Sunrise, UHH, UVDN South, and NDB at the top. It does show Sutherland, but Sutherland has not had service since COVID hit.
But Sutherland and Winston are getting fixed route service, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So then we have the third page is the medical transportation information. And if you take a look at this, the shaded square here, it shows our total year-to-date gross income, the mileage reimbursement that has been paid out to the drivers. And so we have a net income of $34,902. So what we have been doing with the, we've just been calling it the gap. There are people that are out there that they fall in the gap. They don't qualify for medical transportation rides through Bay Cities. They don't qualify for Oregon Health Plan. They don't live in the paratransit service area, or they can't use paratransit, or they live out in the dial ride areas, but we might not have a vehicle available to be able to get them during the time that they need it. Or maybe they need a trip to Medford or Portland or somewhere because they need to have a procedure done and they don't have anybody to drive them. Their family members have passed or whatever the case may be. So we are using this funding to be able to provide a origin to destination, basically doorstep to doorstep service, using medical transportation drivers and their volunteer drivers that will go and pick them up, deliver them to their appointment. We have just started doing it, so we've really only used it for about 5 different people at this point, but there are people that would never have made it to their surgery or their appointment had we not done this. So John had forwarded me a request from a young lady that we have been working with for the last year, Kelly, the one that you had forwarded me. And so she falls in a really gray area. She is in the Winston dial ride area, but her appointments are during a period of time when Winston dial ride is not running. But she falls outside of the paratransit service area. So we're not supposed to send paratransit to pick somebody up. So that's outside of the service area. So, and she doesn't qualify for medical transportation. So she's been very frustrated over the last year. It wasn't so bad when we weren't charging fares for the bus system or for paratransit. But now that we're back to charging fares, and if we're sending a paratransit vehicle for her, technically we should be charging the fare. So what we were able to resolve through the conversation that we had is that she actually is the perfect candidate for this type of service, to be able to send a medical transportation driver to pick her up, get her delivered to her appointment. That way we're not crossing any of the boundary lines. We're staying true to our funding sources, and she gets the service that she needs. And so pretty excited that we have an opportunity to be able to do something like that. So I was glad that you sent that email to me. I have been listening to the conversations and I can hear how frustrated she is.
Just for, because I know she's online.
Oh.
Is there 2 Cheryls?
Yes, soon to be 3.
Soon to be 3. Okay, so I just want to make sure that clarification was there for her benefit, that there's more than one Cheryl.
Oh, gotcha.
Because I think there was possibly some confusion in.
Okay.
Yeah, the email looked like you were talking about her at first, and then I realized later on in your responses, you were talking about another Cheryl.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there for clarification and her benefit. Okay.
Question about that. So that's not something that we're like advertising widely and it's a case by case thing?
So
Or
we
what is the plan
we
with
haven't
that?
been advertising it because we were, number one, we needed to make some money so we could actually do it.
Right.
But then we also need to know that we have to figure out exactly what the parameters are in order for us to offer that service. It can't be arbitrary. What we do for one, we do for all. So the rules have to be written down where everybody can see them. They can see whether or not they qualify for the ride. They can ask for that specific service, but we're still roughing it out.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, that's where we want to get to. We want to
We
have
want
it.
it to actually be a program.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
Thank you.
We're looking for Kelly's.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, on to number, Jennifer Boardman, do you have anything for us? Hearing nothing, thank you.
Thanks, John. Of course, I have lots of stuff I could tell about. They did pass a new, the CDC came through with a new regulation regarding mask wearing at the transit hubs. So the transit hub is an outdoor area, then people will not have to wear masks now going forward. I imagine that this is the first of several this type of relaxing of the regulations for mask wearing, and anticipate probably some more coming throughout the summer into the early fall. Trying to get all the agreements through, hoping to have them all done. I know I have the 5310 for UPTD that has not been finalized yet, but you guys should have received your 5304, your 5311, the STF funding agreements. And let's see, the conference this year is going to again be virtual, and they're asking for suggestions if anybody has anything that they want to learn about that we can try to get people to come. The one other thing that I really needed to talk with the board about was about procurement training. As part of the compliance findings, one of the findings was that the board had to take part in a procurement training that will be offered by RLS. We would like to have that take place sooner rather than later. So I'm needing to find out if there's a possibility that we could do some early morning trainings, because the trainer is actually in Ohio. So he can work early mornings. I'm not 100% sure about weekends, but there is that possibility of doing a 4-hour weekend training. So what I need from the board is some options. We can't do late evenings because it's late back there. And they aren't authorized to travel at this point in time.
I'm not doing any early morning meetings. That's not happening. If you can't do late meetings, I definitely don't have to do early meetings.
So I guess we're at weekends. Just make sure it's a crappy day.
Yeah, yeah, a really crappy day.
Looking for a rainy,
Hurricane.
yeah. 110 out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weekend, I guess. Does that work for everybody?
I'll have to double check.
It's hard to say. Tom?
Well, I don't know where you split the difference between early morning and late evening. I mean, there's afternoon.
So the question was weekends or early mornings, and weekends are best for me. I work nights, so on weekdays.
Okay.
Janice? Weekends?
What was the question?
Weekends or early morning for training? 4-hour training.
Oh, early morning is fine.
That's what we all said. Ugh, yes. It's procurement. It'll be exciting.
Right.
Weekends to week, well, weekends.
As long as there's donuts,
Yeah.
I.
Okay. Weekends and donuts.
Weekends, not early morning.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys wanna
Was,
do.
so 9 o'clock in the morning would be noon for him.
That's
So that
fine.
might
That's- No, that's not reality. No, noon, afternoon, noon to 4
On a weekend?
in Ohio.
I don't think that that's an option, because we have to work within the confines of what they have available as well. I mean, I could probably get them to go as late as noon, because then it would get done at 4. So
Yes.
I really think that that would probably be the earliest or the latest that he would want to start something. But then again, I don't know for sure about the weekends. I'll have to double check and see if that's a possibility. Because they really were trying to push to have it during the weekday. And there is a possibility of breaking it up over a couple of days, having a 2-hour and then a 2-hour, but
Is this because it's specific to FTA? Is there other training available through special districts in terms of general procurement?
I think RLS wanted to do it specifically because, well, first of all, they're nationwide and they do a lot of work with the FTA. And there are compliance folks and they saw the need. I mean, I could check and see if there's something else, but if there's something else, then the district will more than likely have to pay for it because this is free because it's part of the compliance review.
Check on the weekend, but yeah, bring sugar.
So
Yeah,
your
make sure.
first option is the weekend.
That's option number one.
Okay. And how soon can we do this? Because they want to try to get it done sooner than later, especially in light of the decisions that were made tonight. Does anybody have a date we can throw out there?
I think the soonest would probably be like 10th of July.
Jennifer?
Yeah.
And board and Cheryl.
I'm sorry.
We do need to get to something that's at the bottom of the agenda. Board council has to leave. I do need to get some answers from him before we go. Is this something that we can come back after the executive session and discuss? Jennifer, do you have the time?
Sure.
Okay,
Especially if we're going out to July 10th. That's not a rush.
so we'll come back to item 10 after our executive session. Real quick, before we move on to not agenda and public comments, let's take a 5-minute recess for bathrooms or whatever. So I'm restarting the meeting, so if you want to have a private
I'm just-
conversation.
I'm
you
just
can-
trying to understand the process.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I want to get home tonight.
Okay.
We're calling the meeting back to order. We are on to item number 11, not on agenda. Is there anybody on the board that has any discussion for not on agenda items? Whoa, where'd Mark go?
He left. He
Oh,
had to prepare for a client. So he said he
okay,
went home.
hearing nothing for not on agenda.
Oh,
items.
hold on, I had one quick little thing, just real quick, for you, the flat grants are about ready to come up. I'm
Yep.
sure you know what that is, but there's money available for transit, and so applications probably coming out at the end of the month.
Yes, so I read about it and I'm thinking the,
Clyde. That's what I was kind of thinking, but
I was thinking Crater Lake
well,
Which would increase-
definitely that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be actually two, it could be
through.
adjoining, it doesn't even have to be through, proximity to employment to areas or recreational.
Yeah.
Type things. Yeah. Anyway, just want to let you know, you know about it, so.
Anybody else? Okay, number 12, public comment. Total of 10 minutes. Complete. Is there- Hold on, anybody online that has public comments first? Be Kelly, Tom, Jennifer, who else is over there? That's it. Hearing none, we'll move people in the audience. Jennifer back.
Thank you. I would just like to say that I would really appreciate a third RFP with whatever funding in the center to be able to continue to provide this service for our community. I do not get paid to do this service for my community. That's nothing I've ever done. We've never gotten paid to do this service for our community. There's no administrative costs involved. The nonprofit sucks it up. I do not get paid from the nonprofit while I am working on dial-a-ride. I save up my lunch hours to do dial-a-ride services and everything I do. It is a complete free service that we provide, and no one gets paid across the board, other than we have one guy that lives pretty far out of town, he gets his miles reimbursed, it's like, I don't know, $15 a month or something. But whatever we can do, we are willing to do. I mean, we've already done 2 RFPs. And like Cheryl had stated, she's already spent 50 hours on the first and then 50 hours on the second. We have too. I did that as well. I came in on the weekends. Stayed after hours. I don't get paid for that. But we're willing to do whatever it takes to help our community members that need us. Again, these are people that fall through the cracks of society. These are seniors and people with disability. These people have no other options available. This is it. The service goes away.
Can you hear me?
Can we mute?
This is Kelly. I want to interrupt, but I would like to talk when she's finished, please.
Okay, Kelly, we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
These people that we serve have no one else. They have nothing else. People will actually die if the service goes away. And this isn't about me. It's not even about you. It's about them. And I think it needs to stay about the people we serve. And that's who I'm concerned for. That's it. So just, I'm begging you guys, like, I don't want to cry, but these people are like family. They have no one else looking out for them. No one. And I will always fight for them. And I have the entire community, Sutherland, Oakland, Young College, Drain, Elton, and Spot Gottsburg. Not one person does not stand behind me on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, Kelly? Are you still there?
Yes, hi. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I'm not sure, who was the lady, what was her name that was just speaking, please? The one from the Dial Ride Advocacy that was talking just now?
Jennifer Bragg.
The one that was just speaking? Jennifer Bragg, yes. Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate your passion and your concern, for I am one of these clients that is having detrimental health issues due to certain situations with the current transportation authority. And I heard my name mentioned earlier. So I'm hoping that through this meeting and what Cheryl had said and stated earlier regarding this medical program, I'm not sure where I stand today, so I just wanted to kind of ask that before we close out today, because I did phone and leave a message earlier for somebody to call me back as she had requested on Friday, and that did not happen. So I'm not sure where I stand tomorrow or going forward. So maybe there can be some clarification as to where I might fall in these cracks now, so that I have some idea where I'm kind of standing to go forward with my medical appointments.
Kelly, and I thank you for that. I think what was covered was something that would be of great interest to you. And if Cheryl wants to recap on what she had mentioned, that'd be great.
Yes, Kelly, so you do qualify for this program, and yes, we should have your rides covered, and I don't know what time you called, but you should have received a return call, so we'll check into that first thing in the morning as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was, I had actually my caregiver with me as an advocate, because when she showed up this morning, I was on the floor because I was going into partial kidney distress on Friday due to miscommunication and not having proper fluids on me. So I have been very medically sick, and this is where a lot of my frustration comes from. I respect and understand your frustration, but you kind of have to take yourself out of the box. And what is okay maybe for you is not necessarily okay for me. So maybe it's asking broader questions and having a little bit of better communication with the clients that you're serving. Would that be a possibility?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Kelly, I
Thank
thank you.
Okay, so
for
I
your
look for,
input.
thank you. I'll phone in the morning.
Awesome.
And I would really like to contact Jennifer Bragg, please. I would really like to talk to her, if that is a possibility.
If you'd like to, do you mind if I give her your email address?
You give her my phone number.
If you want to email me again, I can forward you her information. This is John. We've already been emailing.
Thank you, John.
I'll fight for you, Kelly.
Yes, thank you, John, and that one is just pardon me?
I'll fight for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, also, just to back up to not on agenda, there is this item from the elections.
Oh, that's informational for you. That's the invoice.
No vote or signatures need to happen on it?
No.
Okay,
It's informational.
okay.
We were surprised to see the invoice, the cost.
Yeah, 25,000 was
It goes up as you have more
the big one.
candidates.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
what it
It's
is?
based on the
Okay.
number, yeah.
Okay, agenda build for the next meeting, which will be regularly scheduled meeting for July 12th, 2021. Currently, we have on there a bunch. Does anybody have anything they want to see on the next agenda for the regular July meeting,
Aside from what we're pushing forward from this meeting,
aside from everything that we've already mentioned? Yeah.
we will need to do officer elections.
Officer elections
And swearing in.
and swearing in. Can we go any up chair do the swearing in?
Mhm.
Okay.
And I think we should thank John for his service
Next
for the
month.
last 4 years or 3 years or whatever. it's been.
Yeah.
Day and a half.
So we're
He won't be at the next
yeah.
meeting.
Oh, you
Thanks,
won't be
John.
at the next meeting?
Mhm.
Thank you, John.
Okay, at this time, I'm gonna go through a checklist. We're about to enter an executive session in accordance with ORS 192.660, section 2, little I, to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of chief executive officer of any public body, a public officer, employee, or staff member who does not request an open hearing. Notice was sent out last week. We will spend no more than 30 minutes in executive session.
I would make a motion to allow Tom and Janice to remain in the executive session.
We're gonna cover some other items that we can invite them in at the time that becomes appropriate. And we're gonna have the attorney on the phone while we're doing it.
Okay. I think it's okay for them to be part of it.
They're not on the board and they're not sworn in yet.
But they
So,
will be next month, so it's whether they've been elected, so why not? I mean, typically in a governing body, you allow, when you have an executive session and they're present, you typically allow the elected folks to join in so they're familiar with what's going on.
I'm not sure if there's a typical thing for that, but like I said, we'll begin the executive session at some time. If we need them to come back in, we can re-invite them in at another time.
Sorry, motion, that's out of order.
I'm gonna continue thinking about it while I'm reading our checklist. The intent of coming out of executive session we are likely to come out of executive session with the final action to be presented. As such, I said that we're going to spend no more than 30 minutes in executive session. I will just need time to get the attorney on the phone, and then we will begin our executive session.
Who did we lose there?
We've lost Mark, so we have 4 people.
Do we not?
No.
You need to, yeah. you need to-
Hey, Ron, I just called you a little bit early. We're about to go into executive session here in just a moment.
Hey, Tom, do we have your contact information? You guys have contact information?
We've got crosstalk. I'm gonna put you on mute until we're ready.
I can give you it if you want to write it down.
Yeah, go ahead.
My phone number 503-849-8114. And you can currently email me at thwtrotter@pm.me.
Okay, stand by just a minute. Hey, Ron? Real quick, having, we just talked about this with Jennifer. Mike would like to have his wife and Tom Trotter, who were just elected in the last election, who are not board members, to stay for their ability to be up to date on what's happening with this discussion.
Not to participate, to listen.
Not to participate, just to listen. I myself, I'm referring to you.
Well, I mean, my concern is that board members, well, here's what I'm gonna tell the board is that, first of all.
And we are not in executive yet.
Okay, well, I would say that non-board members, to the extent you don't want them telling people about what's discussed, because they're under no obligation to, not discuss what was, they don't have to keep it to themselves. My advice would be that board members only participate. Minutes do need to be kept, but only broad subject, like we discussed this.
Right.
For instance, what's on the agenda item says discussion of the following. That discussion was held.
Okay.
That's all. And it doesn't even have to be in writing, but if you don't put it in writing, it has to be recorded, and that record needs to be kept by the district for 10 years.
Okay.
So I was looking up some of the rules. So here's what I would say is that executive session, if usually the purpose is to discuss items, such as things with legal counsel. And so if we were discussing something that required my advice to the board as legal counsel, I would definitely say non-board members should not be there because they're under no stipulation to,
They haven't taken the secret scroll oath.
Yep.
right,
Okay. Okay. Well,
So I'll let the board decide. My advice would be that unless the person who is going to be at the executive session is there to contribute information or give the board a point of view that is necessary to assist in deliberation, I would recommend against having those people there.
Okay.
I understand the need for continuity and for to have the institutional memory and to help them have the context. But I have a suspicion they're gonna get the context, kind of quickly once they're on the board.
right. All right. Thank you. I'm gonna
I'll remove my motion.
removed. Okay. We're gonna get started here in just a minute. I'm just gonna put you on mute while we set up the meeting.
Well, I'll put myself on.
Okay. You can do that. Okay.
Here's my phone number, in case you have questions about my program. Good, I hope you do, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
You guys recording the meeting or you guys-
Yeah, we'll have our secretary.
I'm not gonna stay
Record.
for the day, I'm not worried.
Okay. Thank you.
Am I going
Bye-bye.
out or?
Yeah, you have to. go
Okay,
and
great.
sit.
I can just say that we held the meeting.
Right. So you're gonna take minimal records.
And are we coming back in, are we
No,
expected to go back into
Except we
regular
had
session?
Yes, I said that. We're gonna do for about.
hanging up. 23.
Okay, so we are back into the meeting. Where did my agenda go? Kat, did you have a motion?
Yeah, I bet you gave it to me. Do you have a motion?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to extend Cheryl's contract as the interim general manager and operations manager / operations manager until September 1st.
Is there a second? The chair seconds. Any discussion?
Question. Is your title currently interim?
No.
What are you?
General
General
manager.
manager.
General
So
manager.
the motion was made to extend Cheryl's contract with the agreement of interim general manager at the position of operations manager until September 1st.
Didn't your contract run out?
The contractors ended
Oh,
at
yeah.
June first.
Well, I guess that's what I'm confused about,
Yeah.
because we're extending her contract. Her contract is for general manager.
Mhm.
So it would be an extension and an amendment to the contract?
So
Or
what
offering,
are you trying to demote me? Is that what it is?
it's, I don't think it's a demotion because first we have to get the motion figured out. So I'm gonna rescind my second. So we can get the verbiage right.
So I'd like to extend Cheryl's contract to
Amend.
September 1st with amended as title is interim general manager / operations manager.
Thanks, but no thanks.
You said to September first?
To September 1st.
Again, I second. Is there a discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. You don't even vote for your own.
Oh, sorry, I haven't had any pain medication for 8 hours.
All opposed?
No,
No,
Motion fails. Is there a second motion?
move to extend Cheryl's contract to September 1st.
second,
Motion by Mike to extend Cheryl's contract to when?
September 1st.
September 1st. Seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? Back to the same. The same deal. I feel that the operations manager is more of a capacity that Cheryl's been working in. And having the ability to have, I don't want to say a contest, seek other applicants who are able to, as lined out in our expectations of a general manager, for being able to work with our providers and work with our board and with ODOT, I think is a vital importance. I don't hear anything in the motion about making sure that we're going to have guidelines and set dates that they must be met prior to the end of the contract. And so for that, I won't be able to support this motion.
May I?
Not yet.
So let me amend my motion by saying I would like to
We'll
extend.
do it to the second, like to
I'll rescind
rescind
my
the second.
So I'll amend my motion or make a motion, I guess a new motion now, to extend Cheryl's contract to September 1st and that the board develop SMART goals.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mike to extend Cheryl's contract to September 1st and to set SMART goals. Seconded by Sarah.
And that's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. That's what SMART stands for.
Again, for discussion, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion?
Who assesses whether she meets the goals or not?
The board
We do.
essentially would. So again, there are no goals or SMART goals set. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what we're going to propose before I can support the idea of a contract extension. Like I said before, we've asked our general manager to meet certain guidelines. It was in the record, therefore they are written goals that we were demanding of her. Those goals have not been met. And so until some goals are actually written down, I cannot support the extension of a contract for our general manager. And for that, I'll be voting no on this motion. Any other discussion?
May I?
We're in,
No, I think
I
there's. a
don't think we
motion on
can.
the table,
Sorry.
so-
So all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no.
No.
No, motion fails.
Now you can speak.
So for the last year and a couple of months, I've not only been doing the general manager position, I have also been doing the operations manager position. I have also been doing the finance manager position. I have also been doing the HR manager position. And the interaction with our dial-a-ride providers, there is a desire to keep a status quo that is no longer acceptable. It does not meet FTA guidelines. It does not meet ODOT guidelines. And so absolutely there has been some friction, because instead of seeing that there is forward motion that we are required to make, there has been constant opposition. There has been every attempt. My goal that you're holding me accountable to is to have the reporting in on time, right?
It's a lot, go ahead.
That's one of.
One
So
of
let's
them.
just focus on the one. Okay, so that one goal, to have the reporting done on time, that requires the providers to actually turn their reporting in on time. Okay, so we have two providers that sat here tonight that not only were non-responsive for their RFP, but they turned their report information in after my deadline for the report. And then there was still correction that needed to be made to it. I went back and forth with one of those providers 8 times before today. I finally received an invoice for their service that they think that they should already have been paid for, that is actually an accurate invoice. Okay, so you're holding me accountable to something that there are other extenuating circumstances. So I've not just been doing the general manager position. I've been doing 5 manager positions, and the pay scale has not allowed me to be able to hire appropriate people. So absolutely, I am not doing a good job. I am the first to admit that. And do you think I feel good about it? I do not.
So, as I said before, we've set a deadline for our general manager to hire people. This was back when Mike was chair, to hire people and
today
fill
you gave me a
positions.
wage.
It's part of the responsibility of a general manager is to communicate with the board what you need, what the shortfalls are, so that the board can then remedy those for you to open up the path to make those avenues available for you to take. I don't feel that our general manager has taken those opportunities. And again, every time there's a deadline to be met, there's a reason of somebody else's fault that the deadlines aren't even being met. I'm not trying to demote our general manager. As I said before, I feel that she would better serve us in that position of an operations manager. And that's why we had these 2 other motions. If there's going to be.
I'm gonna go ahead and move, John. And this motion doesn't require a second under Robert's rules because it takes precedence. But I'm gonna move that we go ahead and postpone this to July 1st, which is Thursday, at which point we'll have the other board members, both the new and the ones that are currently missing, to be able to weigh on this to extend her contract.
I will say that I want to make an amendment to your motion because her contract is right now uncurrent, and that we have a special meeting next week.
Okay, so while we're in the midst of this, I have been unable to actually take vacation time for the entire time that I worked here.
You were in Hawaii just the other day.
Exactly. And I worked 25 hours a week in Hawaii at this job because we do not have adequate coverage.
We've asked you to hire people.
Right,
You could have
and
came with us
today-
for this, for the pay issues before this. What is
So
our next
my
meeting?
pay issue is
Appreciate
based,
that, Mike. Our next meeting will be June 21st.
so I'm not allowed to speak, is this it? We can hear the general public speak, but you can't hear me speak. You did not raise my pay a year ago. So I am,
wasn't commissioned, I wasn't
okay,
in charge a year ago.
as a board, my pay was not raised.
I wasn't
as
told
a
what to raise
board-
it to.
as a board, that's not my responsibility.
Right.
You guys sat in here for executive session for hours.
Our
And
next
came back
meeting will
and
be
told
June
me,
21st.
so again, I cannot speak.
You're attacking and accusing. This is
No, I'm
why I'm
speaking the
having
fact.
problems.
There is, the fact of the matter is, my pay limits every other pay in the scale. So operations manager generally falls at a step below general manager, as do all of the others. So with my pay being set at 70,000, which is below the bottom of the scale for every other agency in the Southern Oregon, and in actually the entire region,
The scale.
you have limited my ability to be able to hire.
We had a unanimous decision on that, on the pay for that, and it was based on performance. Again, our next meeting will be June 21st at 5:30 PM.
Well, I think, John, I made a motion to, which
You
is
said it didn't
one
need
of
a second.
precedents, which is to a time certain, which was July 1st.
And I'm announcing that we're having a special meeting next week on the 21st.
Well, again, it's a motion to postpone it to a time certain, so
Cool.
you can have a
As
special
chair, I'm
meeting. but the
calling a next
position is
meeting.
postponed.
That'll be our subject. Meeting adjourned.